Now in Lesson 7, we're going to touch on Performance Max experiments. While these aren't exactly search campaigns, they do affect your search campaigns, so they're worth talking about here. First, we're going to have a quick overview of the new Performance Max experiment types, and then what you can actually test and how to run them. Let's just touch on what Performance Max is really quickly, because like I mentioned, it's not exactly a one-to-one thing with search. Essentially with Performance Max, you just give Google all of your assets. You give it the shopping feed, ad copy, visuals, YouTube links, any of that. Tell it what your goal is, and give it an audience signal to start with. At that point, it's going to create and run ads on all of its property types to try and reach the goal that you have set. So it'll run on search, shopping, display, Gmail ads, discovery, YouTube. Basically everything Google owns is fair game. The thing is, you can't exclude any of those properties. You can't really control anything. You are really just turning it all over to Google and saying, get me my goal. I don't care how you do it. Here's all the stuff that I would like for you to use. There are two ways to run experiments on Performance Max campaign types. The thing is, unlike other experiments where you're testing various aspects and you can be pretty specific, these aren't really that. It basically helps you see if Performance Max outdoes the more traditional Google ad setups that many marketers still use. So let's review the two experiment types that they offer. The first one is to test uplift from adding Performance Max. So this just assumes that you're not running Performance Max at all. You're just running everything else in separate channels like you normally would. And you're going to see if there's an overall impact to your entire account by running Performance Max alongside your current setup, and then of course just the results from Performance Max itself. The other type is to test Performance Max versus a standard shopping campaign. So we used to have Smart Shopping, which a lot of marketers preferred. That got absorbed into Performance Max. So it kind of created this rift between people that went ahead and went with Performance Max, and then retailers who said, nope, I want more control, and they backed it down to standard shopping. So this bridges that gap a bit to help advertisers see if Performance Max outperforms just their traditional shopping setup. So let's first talk about testing uplift. You follow the exact same steps to create a custom experiment like we reviewed before. You just pick Performance Max types. Once you do that, it's going to have you select the campaigns that you want to include in this test. So what does it actually show us if you're running an uplift test? Ultimately, there's a few things you're looking at. First of all, keep in mind you can only run a 50-50 split. You cannot control any other aspect of this, which is very typical for Performance Max. So it's going to show the eligible campaigns that could be run alongside Performance Max, and then the other current campaigns, and it's going to split the traffic and show you the differences. Basically, you want to look for a few things besides just the Performance Max performance. You want to see, is there an overall uplift in account performance over time? So things like volume, value, any of those things. So let's look at something specific with this. When you're testing uplift, you can choose the dates. And so you're going to see the control group, which is going to say, hey, these are the comparable campaigns that we've included in this, and you can click on them to see. And then the treatment group is the comparable campaigns, and then also the additive Performance Max campaign. Now, there are a couple things that you could look at. Typically what happens is you're going to first look at your business objective. So in this case, ROAS. When you look at ROAS, it's not really surprising to see that the treatment group isn't doing as well, because keep in mind, Performance Max is running further up funnel. So it's not just things like searches or shopping, it's running on Gmail ads, it's running on display, so it's running in other areas to audiences that it thinks are likely to buy at some point, but they're not necessarily bottom of funnel like you're used to with shopping or search. So when you glance at this at first, you might say, okay, it's not doing nearly as well. The thing you have to keep in mind is that what Performance Max tends to do is have additive volume over time. So if you look at the conversion value, even though the return is lower, you're going to see it's producing more revenue. So these are some of the more difficult business decisions that a lot of marketers have to make. Are we getting so much increased conversion value that we are willing to take a bit of a hit on the efficiency because we're pushing a lot more volume? So that volume versus return discussion is usually going to be a business decision, but it's something that I encourage people to look at. I'd also say to look at things like purchase volume. Are you acquiring so many new customers and you know that their lifetime value is better, so it might be worth having a hit short term on the efficiency of how you're paying to gain them because you know that you can make more money in the long term. So just keep those things in mind when you look at these results because it's not as straightforward as what you might be used to evaluating when it's just a straight search campaign. The thing also to keep in mind is that this can be useful, but the black box nature of Performance Max, it's still a very all or nothing decision. So when you see those previous results and you can see, are we really getting a better overall impact? Are we seeing things like increase in brand search? Are we seeing increased revenue? It's really important to also look and see which campaigns is it affecting the most in the experiment. So if you look at the versions of your current campaigns, try and understand how adding this permanently might affect things like your brand campaign. Because like I said, it's probably going to cannibalize some of the stuff you're already doing, and it may or may not keep that efficiency, but it has an additive effect in other ways. The other experiment type is testing Performance Max versus shopping. This is a little kind of strange because, again, this is not a one-to-one comparison. Standard shopping only runs on shopping. Performance Max runs on all those other properties. So you're not really necessarily looking at a head-to-head. I really think this is more of a supplement for retailers to understand, hey, we don't have smart shopping anymore, so if you're still running standard shopping, you can compare how Performance Max would do. So you can decide if you want to, what they say is upgrade to Performance Max, or if you want to keep it standard shopping. So it's really something to help you understand the risk and what happens if you were to show on all these other properties instead of relying only on shopping. You'll see the setup is also still very basic. There are not a lot of options. It is a very straightforward testing environment. You can choose the traffic split, unlike with Uplift. So if you want to make it smaller, you absolutely can. Remember that PMax is going to run you on more than just shopping. If you want to get a better idea of Performance Max solely as a shopping mechanism, you can create a Performance Max campaign, but all you give it is the Merchant Center feed. So don't give it any of the copy that it asks for, don't give it any imagery, don't give it the YouTube link. If you don't give it those things, it sort of forces it to run it as a shopping campaign, and a lot of times the results that we're seeing are akin to what we got when they still had smart shopping. I don't know that this loophole will always exist. It doesn't seem to be an explicit one. It's just kind of one that we happen to find, but I would recommend testing it if it's still available at the time that you watch this. So to recap, Performance Max experiments really only offer two things to test, and it's essentially what would happen if you added this to your account. The first one is what happens to overall account performance when you have the additive effect of Performance Max, and then the second is what happens if you got rid of standard shopping and moved everything to Performance Max. In Uplift, you want to look at things like how does it affect your existing campaigns? How does it affect brand search campaigns? For shopping, you want to look at things like does it deliver better utilization of Google's properties versus trying to manually control things only on the search and shopping interface.